Who is she? The room went still, not because of the question, because of the way he asked it. Quiet, controlled. The kind of quiet that made grown men forget how to breathe. Zoran Veth didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his private event hall, a glass of aged bourbon untouched in his hand, his eyes fixed on something across the crowded room. Something? No. Someone. She was standing near the far wall, not performing, not trying, not dressed to impress anyone. She wore a simple black uniform like every other catering staff member in the room. But she was laughing, softly, to herself, like she had told herself a private joke and found it genuinely funny. Like the 50 most powerful people in Lagos had nothing to do with her world, and she was perfectly fine with that. Zoran hadn't looked away in 4 minutes. His right-hand man, Reto, followed his gaze carefully. Because when Zoran Veth watched something that long, it meant one of two things. He was assessing a threat, or he was deciding something. Neither was comfortable for whoever was at the other end of that stare. "Catering staff, sir. Brought in from outside, one of the servers." Zoran said nothing. Then, very slowly, the woman across the room reached for a tray. As she turned to move through the crowd, for just 1 second, her smile faded. Something crossed her face. Fast. Almost invisible. But Zoran caught it. Because he caught everything. Pain. Old pain. Worn smooth from being carried too long. He recognized that. He didn't know why. He liked it even less that he couldn't look away. He set his bourbon on the table beside him. The soft click of glass on marble cut through the low music like a blade. Reto straightened immediately. "Find out everything about her." Zoran's voice didn't change. Same temperature, same weight. "By the end of tonight." Reto hesitated. "She's just a server, sir." Zoran turned. Just his eyes. "Just enough." "I didn't ask for your opinion." "Yes, sir." And just like that, without a word to her, without a single moment she was even aware of, Adaeze Nworu's entire life shifted on its axis. She had no idea. She was too busy reminding herself to keep smiling, keep moving, keep being invisible. It was the only thing her ex ever said she was good at. Before we go any further, if you love stories that pull you in and don't let go, subscribe right now. Because this one, it's only getting started. And what happens next, nobody saw coming. Her name was Adaeze Nworu. 3 hours before Zoran Veth ever noticed her, she was sitting on the floor of a staff changing room, knees pulled to her chest, phone in her hand, reading a message she had already read 11 times. It was from Kofi, her ex. 4 words. "Saw your photo. Yikes." She had posted a picture from a friend's birthday dinner the week before. She looked happy in it. She remembered feeling happy that night. A rare thing. She had worn a yellow dress she loved and laughed harder than she had in months, and for one evening she had almost forgotten the sound of his voice in her head. Then the message arrived. 4 words. And just like that, the yellow dress went back to the wardrobe. The photo got deleted, and Adaeze went back to being the woman who took up too much space and not enough of the right kind. She had been doing this job, freelance catering, event work, whatever paid, for 7 months. Since Kofi. Since the life she thought she was building turned out to be a life she was living inside someone else's idea of what she should be. Smaller. Quieter. Less. She put the phone away. She stood up. She told herself the same thing she told herself every morning. Keep moving. Stay invisible. Don't need anything from anyone. It worked. Most of the time. The event hall was everything she expected from the kind of wealth she would never know. Low golden light, the soft clink of crystal, conversations that decided the fates of companies and countries. She moved through it like a ghost. Practiced. Tray level. Eyes forward, Smile ready. She was good at the invisibility. Kofi had trained her well. She was near the east corridor when a hand closed on her arm. Firm. Not rough, but not asking either. She turned. The man was tall, well-dressed, with the stillness of someone who operated on discipline rather than calm. "You're Adaze?" Her stomach tightened. Being known by name in this world was never good. "Yes. Come with me. I'm in the middle of service." Something moved in his expression, not irritation, more like surprise, like people didn't usually say that. "Mr. Veth would like to speak with you." The tray felt suddenly heavier. Zoran Veth. She knew the name. Everyone in the room knew the name. You didn't work Lagos events without learning which names meant power and which names meant something more absolute. Zoran Veth was the second kind. Why? The man, Reto she would learn, looked at her as if deciding whether the question was brave or simply unaware. He didn't say. Her hands were steady as she set the tray aside. Her heartbeat was not. As she followed Reto through the crowd, every version of what this could mean ran through her head. None of them were good. People like her didn't get summoned by people like him for good reasons. She thought about the yellow dress. She thought about Kofi's 4 words. Keep moving. Stay invisible. The crowd parted without being asked as Reto walked. Conversations dropped half a volume when Zoran's presence registered near them. The room tilted in his direction without anyone acknowledging it. And then she saw him, standing at the window alone, watching the city like it owed him something. He didn't turn when they approached. The silence stretched. Then, without looking at her, "Leave us." Reto was gone before she could think. Adaze stood there, alone, in a room full of people, feeling more exposed than she ever had in her life. The silence lasted long enough to be deliberate. Then Zoran Veth turned. He was taller than she expected, not just physically, but in the way certain people fill space differently from everyone else. Like the room had reorganized itself around him without asking permission. His eyes found her immediately. Dark, steady. Eyes that didn't scan. They landed. And right now they were landed on her with an attention so focused it felt like being read. Adaze held herself still. She had learned long ago that the worst thing you could do when something felt dangerous was let it see you flinch. "You were laughing earlier." Not a question. "Sir?" "Across the room. 20 minutes ago. You were laughing." A pause. At what? She had been thinking about something her younger sister texted that morning. A voice note of their grandmother mispronouncing a celebrity's name with complete confidence and zero interest in being corrected. She almost said nothing, sir. The automatic answer. The invisible answer. Instead, she heard herself say, "My grandmother. She has opinions about things she knows nothing about." Loudly. Something crossed Zoran's expression. Gone before she could name it. "You weren't thinking about where you were." "No." A beat. "I forget sometimes. Where I am." He studied her for a moment longer than was comfortable. Most people in this room haven't forgotten where they are in 20 years. She didn't answer. Nothing safe to say to that. He moved toward his senior staff, clustered at a careful distance. They assembled without being called, like gravity. "The woman coordinating tonight's table arrangement." His voice was flat, final. "Reassign her." A sharp intake of breath. "Sir, Madam Chidinma has managed your private events for I know how long." He didn't look at the man who'd spoken. "Reassign her." Silence. Then, without turning back to Adaze, "You'll take over coordination of my private engagements, starting with the dinner I'm hosting Thursday." The words landed like stones in still water. "I'm sorry?" Now he turned. "You heard me. I'm a server, tonight. I don't coordinate events, Mr. Veth. I don't have those qualifications. You have better." He watched her. "You notice things. You were the only person in this room tonight who looked genuinely present. A pause. Everyone else was performing. Her throat tightened, because a compliment from someone who never gave them didn't feel like warmth. It felt like a door opening somewhere dark. With respect, she said carefully. You don't know me. No. Something in his expression settled. But I intend to. The cluster of staff behind him had gone rigid. She could feel the recalculation happening in real time. People who had spent years learning who mattered and who didn't, now silently revising their list. She was on it now. She didn't yet know what that cost. Someone will contact you with details. He turned away. You can finish your shift. She stood there, dismissed and elevated in the same breath, which was a feeling with no category. As she walked back through the crowd, tray collected and spine straight, she felt the room differently. Gazes that had slid over her an hour ago now caught and held. Whispers started just behind her, quiet enough that she couldn't make out the words, loud enough to understand the tone. Who is she? Where did she come from? How long before this goes wrong? She kept walking, but somewhere behind her, a woman watched her leave. Not staff, she asserted in ways staff never did. Standing at the corridor's edge with a smile that arrived before it was felt. Sable Drew, Zoran's personal affairs manager, 3 years at the heart of his world. Never once looked at the way he had just looked at the server in the black uniform. She had already decided that Adazi Nworu was a problem. One that needed handling before it became unmanageable. Before it became something that couldn't be handled at all. Adaze didn't sleep that night. She lay in the narrow bed of her one-room apartment in Surulere, staring at the water stain on the ceiling she had privately named Gerald, and tried to make sense of what had happened. You notice things. That was what he said. She had spent 3 years with a man who noticed nothing about her except the parts he wanted to change. Her weight. Her laugh. Too loud, he said. Her ambition, too scattered. Her hope. Always too much. Kofi had a gift for making her feel like a rough draft. Something unfinished. Something that needed significant editing before it was fit for public consumption. And now a man who controlled half the private wealth in this city had looked at her across a crowded room and said, "You notice things." She didn't know what to do with that. Her phone lit up at 2 a.m., an unknown number. Thursday, 7 p.m. Someone will collect you at 6. Don't be late. Arretto. She read it 4 times, set the phone face down, stared at Gerald until morning. She arrived at Zoran Veth's estate Thursday at 6:01, because traffic from the mainland was indifferent to the schedules of powerful men, and she had decided on the bridge that she was not going to spend the evening apologizing for existing. The compound was serious, not beautiful in the way that tried. Beautiful in the way that didn't have to. A woman was waiting at the entrance, not staff. She could tell immediately. Staff had a particular posture, present but retreated. This woman asserted. Everything about her. The placement of her hands, the quality of her stillness, the smile that arrived slightly before it was felt. Stunning, in the architectural way of someone who had worked hard to make it look effortless. Late 30s. Silk, the color of river water. You must be Adaze. Professionally warm. The warmth of someone who had decided in advance what register to use. I'm Sable. I manage Mr. Veth's personal affairs, among other things. A slight tilt of the head. I thought I'd introduce myself since we'll be working in proximity. Something about the word proximity sat oddly, like a door held open just a fraction too long. Of course, Adaze said. Thank you. They walked through the outer corridor. Sable spoke with the ease of someone giving a tour of territory she considered her own. The layout, the protocols, the particular preferences of particular guests. All useful. All reasonable. Then, at the turn of the corridor, almost casual. He does this sometimes, you know. Adaze looked at her. Does what? Pick someone up, from outside his usual circle. A small gesture. He gets interested. He elevates. And then, the silence did the work. The situation resolves itself. I see. I'm not saying this to be unkind. Sable turned to face her fully. Steady eyes. Genuine concern on the surface. Something else entirely below it. I'm saying it because no one told the last one, and that wasn't fair to her. Adaze didn't look away. Thank you, she said evenly. I'll keep that in mind. Sable smiled, turned, and walked ahead. Adaze followed, jaw tight, instincts loud. That wasn't kindness. That was a warning. And warnings only came from people who felt threatened. The question was, what exactly did Sable Drew have to lose? The Thursday dinner had 12 guests. 12 people whose combined holdings appeared in the kinds of documents most people never read. Adaze had done her research, not because anyone told her to, but because that was how she worked. Thoroughly, quietly, without needing to be seen doing it. She had also spent 2 days arguing with herself. This is not your world. You know that. Whatever his reason for putting you here, it is not what you want it to be. She went anyway, because the alternative was going back to freelance serving and Kofi's voice in her head, and Gerald the water stain, and she was not ready to choose that yet. The dinner began at 7:15. Zoran arrived at 7:14. He moved through the room the way she was beginning to understand he always moved, like everything around him had agreed to accommodate him without being asked. No announcement, no performance, just presence, heavy and specific, rearranging the atmosphere the moment it arrived. He didn't acknowledge her. She was coordinating, not attending. There was a difference. She was fine with the difference. She told herself that 3 times. The evening moved well. She had arranged the table so the 2 guests with competing interests were separated by people who could absorb the friction. She had briefed the serving staff on pace, unhurried, never filling a glass before it was close to empty, because powerful people didn't like being watched that carefully. She had adjusted the lighting herself, lowering it by a fraction that changed the room from formal to intimate without anyone knowing why. Small things. The kind no one noticed consciously, the kind that made everything feel right. At 9 o'clock, a hand touched her elbow. She turned. Zoran. Up close, without the buffer of a crowded hall, he was different. More specific. She noticed things she hadn't before. The slight tension in his jaw suggesting he was always processing. The way his eyes moved when he thought no one was watching. Never entirely at rest. The Mensa table placement, he said, low. That was yours. Yes. Mensa and Ose haven't been in the same room without an incident in 4 years. He held her gaze steadily. Tonight they laughed at the same story. She said nothing. How did you know? I read the guest profiles, and I noticed they ordered the same whiskey at the bar before dinner. A beat. People who genuinely hate each other don't share preferences that specific. They were ready to let it go. They just needed not to be seated like opponents. Something recalibrated in his expression, like a calculation had just been confirmed. Where did you study? I didn't. Not formally. Not for this. Then where? I watched people, she said. For a long time. When you're invisible, you see things other people miss. A pause. Waited. You keep using that word. Which word? Invisible. His voice dropped. Lower. More direct. Like it's a fixed thing. Her chest tightened. She didn't answer. He looked at her for a beat too long. It isn't. Then he turned back to his guests. She stood motionless for 3 full seconds. Because no one, not once, in any form, had ever said that to her. Not her mother. Not her friends. not the man who had shared her bed for 3 years and still made her feel like she was occupying space that belonged to someone more deserving. It isn't. 2 words. And they cracked something open she had spent years pressing shut. Later, when the guests had filtered out and staff were clearing the last of the table, she heard it. A voice from the corridor just beyond, low, male, on a call. "She's sharper than she looks. Could be a problem." A pause. Sable's already on it. Her pen stopped. She stood motionless, her heart beat once. Hard. She had walked into something. The full shape of it wasn't clear yet, but the outline was becoming visible, and it had edges sharp enough to cut. 3 days later, Adaze was back at the estate for a working meeting. Review the arrangements for the following week's larger event. 40 guests. Higher stakes. She arrived prepared. As always, what she didn't arrive prepared for was Sable already seated at the head of the meeting table, a placement that was not accidental. With a leather folder open and the composed expression of someone who had decided how this conversation would go before it began. Adaze. A smile. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." "Why wouldn't I?" They worked. Or Sable directed and Adaze absorbed, because the documents were arranged to overwhelm. Dense, jargon-heavy, referencing systems that assumed years of institutional knowledge Adaze didn't have. Deliberate. She could feel the deliberateness the way you feel a room's temperature drop before anyone admits it's cold. She asked questions anyway. Precise ones. The kind that showed she understood more than Sable had planned for. Sable's smile thinned by degrees. At 11:15, Zoran entered. The room reconfigured itself, as rooms did. Sable's posture adjusted, fractionally, almost invisibly. The orientation of a person toward something they considered theirs. Noted. "Where are we?" He addressed the room but looked at Adaeze. She walked him through her notes. The guest layout. The sequencing. A concern about the venue's sound configuration that would affect the presentation portion. He listened, didn't interrupt. Asked one question at the end. Sharp. Specific. When she answered it correctly and with detail, something in his face settled. "Good." He looked at Sable. "Any issues?" "None from my end. Smooth. Seamless. Though a few of next week's guests have noted, privately, some discomfort with a new face at this level of coordination." A gracious pause. "I'm sure it's nothing. I just want to make sure we're managing expectations." The air shifted. Zoran held his gaze on her for a moment. "Which guests?" "I'd rather not say specifically. You know how people are." Another smile, full of something that wasn't warmth. He said nothing, turned back to his documents. Sable glanced at Adaze across the table, just long enough to communicate something precise and private. "See how this works?" "And you don't." Adaze looked back at her notes. The incident happened on her way out. She was descending the main staircase when her right foot caught something on the edge of a step. A bag. Placed at the perfect angle, in the wrong light, at the wrong speed, it would catch. It caught. Her hand slammed the banister. Barely. Her knee hit the step, and the pain shot up sharp and immediate. She held on with both hands and breathed. "Don't fall. Don't fall." She didn't fall. She looked up. At the top of the staircase, a junior staff member she didn't recognize, already turning to walk away too quickly. And behind him, further back, almost in shadow, Sable, watching, not alarmed, not rushing forward, still evaluating, the way someone watches the results of an experiment. Their eyes met, neither spoke. Then Sable turned and disappeared into the corridor. "Are you all right?" Reto. At the bottom of the stairs, looking up with the closest expression to alarm she had seen on him. "Fine." She kept her voice level. "I slipped." Reto looked at the bag on the step. At her. He said nothing, but he pulled out his phone. And Adaiz, gathering herself from those marble steps with hands that were categorically not shaking, understood. Sable had miscalculated one thing. Reto had seen it. Which meant Zoran would know within minutes. What happened next? Nobody in that house was prepared for. Because Zoran Veth's response was not measured. It was not strategic. It was immediate. And it was furious. Zoran found out in 9 minutes. Not because Reto waited. Reto never waited with things that had crossed from inconvenient into deliberate. And what happened on that staircase was so deliberate, it was almost a signature. Adaizi was in the lower corridor, knee throbbing, face arranged into something that communicated nothing when she heard his footsteps. She recognized them already. The weight and pace of a man who had never once rushed and still always arrived first. He turned the corner and stopped. One sweep, thorough, immediate. The way someone checks for damage while trying not to show they care about the result. Your knee. It's fine. A daze. Something about the way he said her name, unhurried, like it deserved all its syllables, made her chest do something inconvenient. I slipped on a bag left on the step. I'm fine. It was not nothing. Flat. Final. The conversation about whether it was nothing was already closed. Where is Sable? She said nothing. Deliberately. His jaw tightened. He already knew. That was the thing about Zoran Veth. You didn't have to tell him things. He assembled them from the angle of a pause, the weight of a silence, the geography of what someone chose not to say. He turned to Reto. Find her. Reto left. Zoran looked back at Edeyezi. You should have told me immediately. I handle my own problems. Not in my house. It didn't land as possessive. It landed as responsible. In my house, your problems are my problems. She had no category for that either. She only heard what happened next afterward. Reto found Sable in the East Wing, on the phone, unhurried. The calm of someone who had acted and was waiting for consequences to be absorbed the way they always had been in 3 years of near-total impunity. She did not look calm when told Zoran wanted to see her. Adaiz was not in the room for that conversation. She would never know exactly what was said. She only knew the outcome. Sable Drew was removed from all coordination responsibilities by end of day. No announcement, no confrontation. A quiet, total repositioning that left Sable with access to none of the things that had made her powerful. Clean. The kind of consequence that didn't need noise because it was already complete. When Adaiz heard, she felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not relief. Unease. Because a woman like Sable did not absorb a blow like that and go silent. She filed it somewhere. And the filing, in Adaizi's experience, was always the most dangerous part. That evening, her phone lit up. Unknown number. You think he's protecting you. He's using you. Ask him what happened to the last woman he elevated. Ask him what she lost. She read it twice. Set the phone down. Picked it back up. Gerald the water stain offered nothing useful. She almost didn't go back. 3 days passed. Reto called. She let it ring twice before answering on the third, saying she needed more time to prepare. He accepted without pushing, which told her Zoran had said something, which told her more than she wanted to know about how carefully she was being managed. She was not used to being managed carefully. On the 4th day, she walked through the market near her building, pepper and frying plantain and the particular warmth of a city always fully alive. She bought groundnuts she didn't need and let herself think. The message sat in her chest like a stone. Ask him what happened to the last woman he elevated. She knew it was a manipulation. Sable's, probably. Or someone acting for Sable. Designed to make her small again. To send her back to invisible before she became too visible to manage. She knew all of that, and still couldn't stop turning it over. Because the real truth, the one she had been pressing down since the first event, was that she didn't understand why she was here. She was competent, observant. But this world was full of people with better credentials and longer histories. So why, specifically, her? Her phone rang. Not Reto. Zoran. She stared at it for 2 full rings, then answered. "You're not preparing." His voice. Certain. "I am." "You're avoiding." She opened her mouth, started again. "I got a message a few days ago. Unknown number." The quality of the silence changed, sharpened. "What did it say?" She told him. Word for word. Because she had read it enough times, it was simply part of her now. The silence afterward was longer. "Come to the estate," he said, with a precision that seemed to cost him something. "Tonight. We need to talk. About what's true. And what isn't." She arrived at 8. He was in a room she hadn't seen before. Smaller, lined with dark shelving. The kind of room that was used rather than displayed. Standing when she entered. "3 years ago," he said, "someone inside this operation passed information to the wrong hands. It cost people who trusted me. Everything." His jaw was tight. The woman who did it operated exactly the way Sable operates. Close proximity. Manufactured trust. Incremental access. I didn't see it until it was too late. Understanding arrived slowly, then all at once. Sable thought I was the same. A plant. Yes. And what do you think? He looked at her steadily. "I think you are the most genuinely unstrategic person who has ever walked into this house." The corner of his mouth moved. The structural suggestion of something that wasn't quite a smile. "In my world, that is extraordinarily rare." She exhaled slowly. "Who sent the message?" "Sable. Through a third party. If you doubted me and left, she didn't have to worry about what you'd seen." The pieces arranged themselves into a shape that was clarifying and unsettling in equal measure. "She was the one who passed information 3 years ago," Adaze said. Quietly. A conclusion, not a question. His expression confirmed it before he spoke. "I've been building the case for 18 months. She doesn't know I know." A pause. "I needed her to believe she still had proximity. I needed her to keep moving. And bringing me in, that was necessary." He said it before she finished. "And real." He didn't look away. "Both things." The room was quiet. "You used me. I created a situation." A pause. "I did not anticipate what the situation became." She looked at him for a long time. He didn't look away. She was learning he didn't explain himself beyond what was true. And what he had just said was, as far as she could tell, precisely, uncomfortably true. "I did not anticipate what the situation became. Neither had she." She came back the next morning. No announcement, no call ahead. She arrived at 7:15, told the gate she was there for event preparation, and the gate let her through because her access hadn't been revoked. That, she supposed, meant something. Reto met her at the entrance looking like someone who had been told to expect anything and was still mildly surprised. "He's in the East Courtyard." "I know where the East Courtyard is." She went to the event room, spread out her materials, started working. Because whatever complicated, layered thing was happening around her. The event was in 4 days. It needed someone to prepare it, and she was apparently that person. She had been working an hour when the sound reached her. From outside the perimeter wall. A low, sustained pressure. Engines, multiple. That her body registered before her mind did. The kind of sound that had weight behind it. That meant something had decided to arrive. Then shouting. Muffled by distance but sharp at the edges. Reto appeared in the doorway. "Stay in this room." "What's happening?" "Stay in this room." He was gone. She stayed approximately 45 seconds, then moved to the window. The outer courtyard was not chaos. Too organized for that. 3 dark vehicles, positioned with the deliberateness of people who had thought about sightlines. Zoran's security moving to intercept, professional and tight, but outnumbered in a way that made the geometry uncomfortable. At the center of it, beside the lead vehicle, stood a man she didn't recognize. Tall, pale suit. The kind of stillness that looked like Zoran's on the surface, but held something different underneath. Where Zoran's stillness came from discipline, this man's came from indifference. Like consequences had simply stopped applying to him. He was looking at the main entrance, waiting. Zoran entered the courtyard from the side, Reto at his shoulder, 2 more security flanking wide. He stopped at a distance that was close enough to be clear. The 2 men looked at each other. Even from the window, she could feel the history in it, the specific weight of 2 people who knew each other across a long, complicated distance. Then the man in the pale suit said something, and Zoran's posture, usually so controlled, shifted. By a degree most people would miss entirely. She didn't miss it. Because she watched people? She always had. What she saw in that degree of shift was not anger, not calculation. It was the stillness of a man who has just heard something that changes the map of everything he thought he knew. The man in the pale suit smiled. Then he looked up. Directly at the window where she was standing. Directly at her. The smile changed. Still pleasant. Still completely without warmth. He said something to Zoran without looking away from her. Then he got back in the vehicle. All 3 cars left, as unhurriedly as they had arrived. She stepped back from the window. Zoran appeared in the doorway 2 minutes later, doing a great deal of controlled work with his expression. "You didn't stay in the room? Who was that?" A pause. "His name is Dale Morrow," said carefully, like the name had edges. "He runs the operation that moves through the gaps in mine. A rival. An enemy. The distinction significant. He's been looking for a pressure point into this organization for 2 years. He met her eyes. He thinks he's found one." She understood before he said it. Felt it before the words arrived. "He thinks I'm leverage." Zoran didn't answer. He didn't have to. "He saw you bring me in. He knows what happened with Sable. He's constructed a theory." His jaw was tight. "That you matter to me." The words sat between them. He didn't deny it. That night, in the room Zoran had arranged for her, because returning to Surulere was no longer safe, including, quietly, for her. A Daisy sat on the edge of the bed and thought about her mother. Not the grief of her. The actual woman. Adaizen Waru Sr., who had run a catering business in Port Harcourt for 22 years with no investors, no connections, no safety net, and the absolute certainty that she understood people better than most, and food better than anyone. That those 2 things were more than enough to build something real. She had died when Adaiz was 24. Quietly, the way she did everything. And in the years since, Adaiz had slowly, almost without noticing, become smaller. Because there was no one left who had known her when she was full-sized. Then Kofi, who had a talent for finding the places where a person was already uncertain and applying, with great patience, exactly the right pressure. She had believed him. That was the part she couldn't yet fully forgive herself for. She moved to the window. Lagos at night. Orange and gold. The aliveness of a city that didn't consider sleeping a priority. She thought about the woman in that event hall, laughing at her grandmother's voice note in the middle of 50 powerful people. Not trying to be seen, not trying to disappear. Just present. Genuinely, unself-consciously present. She had been that woman before Kofi. She was beginning to remember her. A knock. "Come in." Zoran. He looked different at this hour. Not softer, but less armored. Sleeves rolled. The look of someone who had stopped working because something else needed his attention. "You're not sleeping." "Neither are you." He sat in the chair by the window. She sat on the edge of the bed. For a while neither spoke, and the silence was the most comfortable thing she had felt in days. My mother built everything from nothing, she said finally, looking at the city, not at him. She never explained herself to anyone, she just built. And I watched her and thought, that's what I want. That certainty. That kind of presence. He said nothing. Listening. Then I spent 3 years with someone who was very good at making me forget that. She stopped. Then said it plainly. He told me I was too much. Too loud. Too fat. That the version of me people might actually want was a reduced version. Quieter. Smaller. Less. The room was silent. I'm telling you this, she said, turning to look at him, because I want you to understand who walked into your event hall that night. Not someone confident. Not someone strategic. Someone who had spent 3 years being made to feel like a rough draft. Zoran was watching her with that focused, landing attention. And you said, you notice things. Her voice was steady. And I didn't know what to do with that. Because the last person who looked at me carefully told me everything he saw was wrong. A long silence. The man who said that to you. Kofi. He was wrong. Said with certainty. Not to comfort. As a fact. The way you stated a fact about mathematics. Not partially, completely. Her throat tightened. You walked into a room of people who have been performing their entire lives, he said, and you were the only one who is actually real. That is not a small thing. A pause. In my experience, it is extraordinarily rare. She looked at him. He looked back. And she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Not just seen, but accurately seen. By someone with no reason to be kind who was being precise instead, which was better than kind, which was the thing she had needed without knowing what to call it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She turned it to show him. He read it. His eyes darkened. Tell him you know about Mirabelle. Watch what he does. She looked at him. Who is Mirabelle? And for the first time since she had met him, Zoran Veth looked like a man who had not prepared for a question. Mirabelle was my sister. The past tense arrived first, heavy with the particular weight of a grief that had not softened, only become more familiar. The way certain losses become furniture, always present, no longer surprising, never not there. A daze sat without moving. She worked with me in the early years. She had the same quality you have. That genuine, present attention to people that can't be learned or performed. He moved to the window. The city spread below them. Dale Morrow had her killed 4 years ago. She had found something. Information that would have ended him. She was moving it to me when his people intercepted. A Daisy said nothing. There was nothing to say. He sent a message afterward, said, "Now we're even." His voice was controlled. We were not even. We will not be even until I finish what she started. The case against him. Everything Mirabelle found is still out there, distributed, hidden in pieces. She was careful. She knew the risk. For 4 years, I've been reconstructing it. Sable was reporting my progress the entire time, making sure I never got close enough. A pause. I've been building the final case for 18 months. She doesn't know I'm there. Adaze looked at him steadily. He came here today because you're close. Yes. And he looked at me because I'm the variable, the thing you didn't plan for. Yes. She stood up. Then we finish it. Simple. Logical. The only next step. Adaze. You've done this alone for 4 years. Careful and methodical, and he is still here. She met his gaze. I am not what he prepared for. Use that. Something moved through his expression, not calculation. Something raw, something that looked like relief. What I need requires you to be visible, he said, in a way that draws him out. I know. It's not safe. I know that too. He looked at her for a long moment, doing the thing he rarely did, abandoning the calculation and simply responding. The event next week. Dale will be there. He thinks he's coming to observe the leverage. His voice was even. Let him come. Show him what he misread. The silence between them changed. No longer two people navigating unfamiliar ground, two people who had found, without intending to, the same ground, standing on it together. He crossed the room, stopped in front of her. Not to impose. Something different. Deliberate. You walked into my world, he said quietly, carrying something you didn't know was valuable. What? Yourself. Unchanged by it. Unperformed. His voice dropped. I have been in rooms full of people for 15 years. I have not been in a room with someone real in longer than I want to say. Her heart was doing something complicated. You spent 3 years being told the wrong thing about yourself, he said. I know what it is to carry something false for too long. It calcifies. He met her eyes. You are not a rough draft. You are not too much. You are not the reduced version. If Kofi told you otherwise, he was working from fear. Because the full version of you is not comfortable for someone who needs to be the largest thing in the room. She breathed. Something that had been clenched for 3 years. Longer, maybe. Loosened. Not completely. But enough. Then her phone rang. Not unknown. Del Morrow. His name on the screen. Which meant he had her number. Which meant he wasn't waiting for next week. He was moving now. She answered it. Zoran's hand closed around her wrist, not to stop her. She felt the difference immediately. He held on, but he didn't pull. He was letting her choose. She answered. Adaize Nworu. Del Morrow's voice was what she expected, warm at the surface, nothing underneath it but intention. I wanted to introduce myself properly, without someone else's courtyard between us. I know who you are. Good. Then I'll be direct. A pause, smooth as a prepared surface. I want you to understand something about the man whose house you're staying in. He finds people, specific kinds, people with a quality he recognizes and needs. He elevates them. He uses what they offer. And when the purpose is served, a breath, the elevation ends. Sometimes quietly, sometimes not. She said nothing. I'm not saying this to frighten you. I'm saying it because you deserve the full picture. Sable's words. Almost exactly. Same architecture, same warmth covering the same cold intention. She almost smiled. Thank you, she said. That's very considerate. I hope you'll consider Mr. Morrow. Clear. Even. I know about Mirabelle. Silence. Half a second. On a man like Dale Morrow, half a second of silence was a seismic event. I see. Recalibrating. She could hear it. I know what you did. I know what Sable was providing. And I know that everything Mirabelle gathered is almost completely reconstructed. She kept her voice level. Certain. I also know you came to this estate today not because you're ahead of this situation, but because you're not. And you know it. Beside her, Zoran had frozen. You're very confident, Morrow said, for someone who walked into this world 3 weeks ago. I've been watching people my whole life. She looked at Zoran. He was looking back with an expression she had no previous category for and was creating one for now, in real time. It turns out that's useful. A pause. Then, you should be careful, Adieza. I've been told that before. A beat. It didn't slow me down then either. She ended the call. The room was very quiet. You told him we have the full case, Zoran said. I told him what he needed to believe. We don't have the full case. I know. But he doesn't know how close you are. Now he'll move. Try to pull back whatever he has in play before you reach it. And when he moves, he exposes it. Yes? Zoran looked at her for a long moment. You just did in 40 seconds what I have been trying to engineer for 18 months. She shrugged slightly. You were being strategic. He was prepared for strategic. He wasn't prepared for you. No one, she said, with a directness that surprised even herself, has ever been prepared for me. They just convinced me I was the problem. Something crossed his face slowly, the way light enters a room when a door opens. Gradual, then all at once, then impossible to imagine the room having been dark before. He crossed to her. She didn't step back. He stopped close. Not to manage her, not to hold her in place. Something different. The careful navigation was gone. They were past the part where this was uncertain. I told you something the first night I saw you, he said. You didn't speak to me that night. No. The corner of his mouth moved. I said it to Reto. A pause. I said, find out who she is, by the end of tonight. His voice dropped. I have never said that before, about anyone, in 15 years. Why? Because you were laughing. Simple, like the simplest answer was the truest one. In a room full of people performing, you were the only one actually somewhere, actually present. He held her gaze. I couldn't look away, and I am not a man who has difficulty looking away from things. She almost laughed. He saw it. She saw that he liked it. I used you, he said. That part was true, and I won't construct a version of events where it wasn't. His jaw was steady. But the part where it became something else, where I sat in this building thinking about what you said, what you noticed, how you moved through things, that was not strategy. That happened without my permission. She looked at him. You told me, she said slowly, that you intended to find out who I was? Yes. Did you? He didn't hesitate. I found out who you were, and then who you are, and then a breath, who I am, around you, which I was not expecting. She thought about the yellow dress, the deleted photo, 4 words from a man who spent 3 years making her smaller. Saw your photo? Yikes. She thought about her mother, building everything from nothing with both hands, and the certainty that she was enough. She was still that woman. Had been, the whole time. She just needed someone to stop performing long enough to see her, and to stop waiting for the world's permission to be seen. If I stay, she said, it's not because you elevated me, or because this world is impressive. She met his gaze. It's because I choose it, on my own terms. Yes. Something settled in him that had been unsettled since the beginning. That's the only version I want. She took a breath. Then I'm staying. He reached for her hand. Not to hold her in place, not to pull her toward him. Contact. The kind that meant, I see you. I'm here. You are not invisible. You know, she said quietly. The night this started, I was sitting on a changing room floor reading a 4-word message from my ex. What did it say? She almost smiled. Saw your photo. Yikes. He looked at her for a moment. He was a fool, he said. Yes, he was. And for the record, his voice dropped, certain the way he was certain about things he had decided. I have looked at that photo. A pause. And everyone since. Her breath caught. He didn't look away. And in the quiet of an estate that had seen 15 years of strategy and consequence and carefully calculated living, something uncalculated and irreversible had taken root. Not because it was convenient, not because it was planned, because it was true. And in a world built on performance, truth, when it finally arrived, had a way of being the most powerful thing in the room. 3 weeks later, Del Morro was in custody. The case Mirabelle had built, completed at last by the people who loved her, was presented in full. And Adaizane Woru stood in a room full of the most powerful people in the city and felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, exactly the right size. Not too much, not reduced, not a rough draft. Complete. If you felt every moment of this story, subscribe now. Because the next one? It starts where this one only dreamed of going.